Good evening and welcome. It is Monday, 6:30 p.m. on September 12, 2022. I call to order this meeting of the Burnsville Planning Commission. Tonight's Planning Commission meeting is being held both virtually and in person by using Zoom. As chair, I'll be leading to the Planning Commission meeting, and the public is welcome to participate when invited throughout the meeting. Members of the public may attend the meeting in person or join via online Zoom, and additional instructions on how to participate are posted online on our city website, that is at burnsvillemn.gov, in the public meeting calendar. As usual, tonight's meeting is available for viewing on BCTV and on the city's website. If you're unable to participate this evening and would like to submit public testimony, I encourage you to email city staff or mail us directly here at City Hall. You may participate on the meeting tonight online by using zoom.us/join and typing in meeting ID 821-7017-7530. Once you're logged into the meeting, please use the chat feature to tell a moderator which item you wish to speak to. If attendees experience audio problems, we suggest you leave the meeting and then try rejoining. This usually fixes the issue. You may also call into the meeting at 651-372-8299. Again, the meeting ID is the same, 821-7017-7530. For each public hearing, I will open up a time when callers may speak to that item, and we'll give more instructions at that time. Your call will be muted until then, so please note there could be a slight delay, so please turn off whatever you're watching the meeting on due to the differences in technology. Again, all this information and more is included on the city's website, and that includes tonight's agenda and all our background information, and that's at burnsvillemn.gov, again, under the public meeting calendar. Everyone should have received a package with the background and should have had a chance to look at the agenda. Any changes to agenda, commissioners? Any changes, staff?
No changes.
Seeing none, I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Braddock.
Motion to approve.
Motion made by Commissioner Braddock. Commissioner Lee.
I'll second the motion.
Second by Commissioner Lee. All in favor, please signify by saying aye. Aye. It has approved. And in those minutes, there should be minutes in that background from August 22nd meeting. Any changes to the minutes from that meeting, commissioners? A lot of head shaking, so I'm going with no.
No
Staff?
changes.
No changes from staff. I'm looking for a motion. Commissioner Wallace.
Motion to approve the minutes.
Motion made by Commissioner Wallace. Commissioner Anderson.
I second.
Second by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And the motion passes. Third item on the agenda is a public hearing. It's an application for Carolyn Wolf for an interim use permit for outdoor storage of commercial building materials for Beacon Roofing Supply located at 701 Lady Bird Lane. Here to present is one of our city planners, Sarah Madden. Miss Madden, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So as mentioned tonight, we have a public hearing before you for an interim use permit for outdoor storage. So the subject site here is located in our Gateway Industrial Medium zoning district as part of the Gateway area, the Minnesota River Quadrant in the comprehensive plan. And in that area, outdoor storage type uses, the intent is for them to be phased out over time, and they're listed as interim uses in the zoning ordinance. So what we're reviewing tonight is that interim use, similar to the conditional use permit process. So the site itself, as part of the Burnsville Industrial Park subdivision, the building is an existing building from 1973, and the application we have before you this evening is for outdoor storage on a portion of the property related to a new tenant in the northern part of the leasable space within the building. So shown here is a site plan provided by the applicant showing the general location of the outdoor storage as well as some other areas of improvement that they have kind of gone ahead and taken moves toward as part of their moving in for the tenant space. So just as a note, the area outlined in red here, just above 27,000 square feet of outdoor storage area, that is the area that is part of the interim use permit approval. Other areas for improvement on the site plan are related to a previous grading permit that they've already gone through the process with the city for that did not need any sort of planning commission or city council review. So again, the application this evening is for outdoor storage of commercial building products and roofing materials to be located in this area. It will be within a fenced-in area. You can see outlined here around the perimeter of their northern kind of leasable tenant space, and then it would be accessible by a gate. So there are some changes proposed to the site in order to accommodate the installation of the fence, which would separate off some of the parking area from the remainder of the site. So we have conducted a review of the parking on site, and there are 69 parking spaces currently, and kind of based on staff review of the application and the existing businesses, there's not a demonstrated need for additional parking based on the uses that are provided within the building. They're generally warehouse, some distribution, some manufacturing, and the new use for the outdoor storage would be distribution as well. So there are no parking concerns with the application as proposed. So staff does have some administrative capabilities to reduce maximum or minimum parking minimums on the site, and in this case, this would be part of the building permit approval. So we have reviewed for this tenant in the space for their internal portions of the building, but again, tonight's approval for the interim use permit is for the outdoor storage area. So some things to note, you can see here there is a overhead transmission power line easement that does encumber the northern part of the site, and a portion of course, the fence as well as the outdoor storage area as a whole is within that easement. So there is a recommended condition on this application that staff receive the easement holder's approval of the location of the storage and the fence prior to issuing those exterior permits related to that work. The fencing that is proposed itself is an 8-foot fence that would be chain link with a privacy screen on it, so that is a permitted fencing material in the zoning ordinance, and they don't need any additional city council or planning commission review for that material. So as mentioned, within this zoning district, the plan is for outdoor storage type uses to be phased out over time. Generally though, there are several properties within the area that have interim use approvals for types of outdoor storage and other kind of outdoor impact uses for various periods of time. Directly to the west of this property, or to the west of this property is an interim use permit approval from 2020, which was for a period of 20 years. And so there are a number of approvals in the area similar to that. In this case, the applicant has requested a 7-year term for the interim use permit approval, and staff is supportive of the request. We feel that with the included conditions and receiving that easement holder approval, this is a pretty straightforward application for the terms of them being able to conduct their business within their portion of the site. So overall, staff is recommending approval of the interim use permit, subject to the time limit of the 7-year period, the easement holder approval documentation, and then that the height of the material stored shall not exceed the height of the screening fence, which is to be provided, that no exterior signs be installed without issuance of a permanent sign permit, and that exterior lighting be downcast and shielded on all faces. So this is a public hearing this evening, and then I can stand for any questions. We do have a member from the applicant group that is available on Zoom if there are any questions for the applicant.
Great, thank you, Ms. Madden. Commissioners, any questions for city staff? Commissioner Anderson.
I was just wondering, you mentioned that a similar property had a 20-year extension on that. What's the goal, if without thinking of the extensions, for actually phasing out the outdoor storage?
So that's a good question. Generally within the comprehensive plan, we have the Minnesota River Quadrant as a focus area for later redevelopment. So a lot of that is pending closure of the landfill, as well as the mining operations of Kramer Mining and Materials. So many interim use permits this began in about 2006, whenever this was placed as an interim use in the zoning district. And generally, we've had a few that have come in since then that have been extensions on interim use permits that they received in the late 2000s. So we are, as a city, we have approved, and the city council's approved periods of 20 to 25 years. Just in this particular case, they requested 7 years as part of their application. But from what we know is that 20 years from now, it's very likely that those two major uses of the mine and the landfill will still be operating.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Did you say there was 69 spots available? Parking
Yes,
slots?
total on the
Okay.
site.
Wow, that's plenty. All right, with that, I am going to turn it to the applicant, Mr. Covesto. Is that correct?
That is correct. If there's any further questions for me, I'd be happy to answer them at this time.
Great. Any questions for the applicant? No, we're not seeing any. It sounds like a pretty quick hearing. Let's move into the public hearing. It is 6:40. I'm opening the public hearing. Anyone on Zoom can let the moderator know that they would like to speak on this issue. Or anyone calling in can dial *6. And I'll give it a few minutes here. Anyone here that would like to speak to this issue can also walk up to the lectern. And there isn't a mad rush for the lectern today, and that's okay. I don't believe anybody's on Zoom. No one on Zoom. So with that, I will close the public hearing at 6:41. Turn it over to the commissioners. Any discussion? Any? Commissioner Wad?
It seems pretty straightforward. I'd be happy to make the motion if no one else has comments or questions. Okay. Can you put the motion back up on the screen again?
Didn't memorize it.
No, I didn't. I move that the Planning Commission recommends to the City Council, I don't see it on the screen yet.
It's online.
Oh, it can, should I come over there?
Can't turn it.
Yeah, I'd say come on, just come over here.
I love it.
Yeah.
This works.
I move that we recommend to the City Council approval of the interim use permit to allow outdoor storage of commercial building materials subject to the 4 conditions that were listed.
A motion has been made by Commissioner Wad. Commissioner Wallace?
I'll second that.
Second by Commissioner Wallace while he still has power. Please, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Seeing none, that passes, and it will be on the council's consent agenda for September 20th at 5:30 p.m. here in these chambers. Thank you for choosing Burnsville, and I'm hoping this works well for you. Appreciate it. And thanks for joining us tonight as well.
Awesome, thank you, I appreciate the time.
And with that, we'll move on to the next item, and that's a public hearing for an application of Mohammed Farah for a conditional use permit for a long-term care facility within the existing building for Abria Recovery located at 14750 Loch Levon Drive. Here to speak on this again is our city planner, Sarah Madden. Ms. Madden.
Thank you, Chair. Again, we have an application with public hearing this evening. So as stated, this is a conditional use permit for a long-term care facility. So the site here is zoned B2, which is our neighborhood business district. It is within the comp plan as just general business for that office business retail uses. And the 1.3 acre property is existing here. It's just south of the Walgreens pharmacy off of Loch Levon Drive. So this site currently vacant, but it does contain a 2-story office building. It has been used in the past for a drug and alcohol counseling business, and the applicant group, which is under review as part of this conditional use permit, is intending to purchase and plans to purchase the site to continue those services, but to add additional services, which are inpatient services for detoxification and withdrawal management services. For a medical clinic or a service, that would be a permitted use in the underlying zoning district. However, the definition in city code for a medical clinic and service does exclude inpatient care. And so as part of this application, based on the 24-hour care of the patients within the facility, they would be a long-term care facility conditional use permit, similar to what we might review for a nursing home or other similar longer-term or intermediate-term care for medical services. So shown here is a survey of the property, and again, so there's an existing office building on site and an existing accessory structure with storage, trash enclosure type of use. So the applicant is proposing to do some remodeling within the building. Primarily, the conditional use permit would be for the lower level of the building, which they would be converting into their care facility. So there would be a nursing station, and I can show you the floor plan later on. So the applicant for their application, they've provided the survey. There are some requirements for a long-term care facility and other similar uses within the zoning code that they have to meet certain density requirements, which is that the patients or the residents need no smaller than 600 square feet per resident on the site. They are definitely able to meet that with their proposed right now of 14 to 20 patients within the facility. There also are some setback requirements from adjoining lot lines of 50 feet, which they've been able to provide and show that they meet that. So just some details with that, as mentioned, that there are, the definition under city code would be for supervision or medical care for 24 consecutive hours, which the application does meet. The proposed space for that detoxification withdrawal management services is a separate floor from their existing services they provide to their existing business in Burnsville, where they do provide drug and alcohol counseling at a different location that they would be moving into this. So for that lower level remodeling, we have calculated some parking for that. We've had to separate out the medical use from the, we're going with the nursing home definition for care, as there is no long-term care facility in our parking schedule. So there are 46 parking spaces on site. They're not shown striped on their survey, but they are on aerial photos, and 38 parking spaces, which would be required for the uses combined at peak occupancy as well as staffing. So they are able to meet those requirements. So shown here is the lower level floor plan showing how they would be proposing to use the space. So there would be a separation of what was formerly some office and conference space into these inpatient care rooms, as well as space for a nursing director or a medical director and a nursing director for the patients within the facility. So the applicant has provided some information on their care as practices, as well as their criteria for admitting patients. I will let them answer questions if the commissioners do have questions more specifically into those details, but they were able to provide a response in their criteria to the police department, which has been attached to your report. So as mentioned, the site is compliant with parking requirements for both of the proposed uses with the 46 that are existing on site. There aren't any exterior changes to the site. However, we've included some conditions related to exterior lighting and signage, which is pretty standard for applications that come through the Planning Commission, because during the neighborhood meeting, the applicant did indicate that there may be some exterior security systems that may be installed, and that may have an effect on some of those exterior lighting standards that we would review with a building permit application. So the application has been reviewed by police, fire, building, and our engineering departments. We don't have any outstanding comments from our staff reviewers, but there was a note from our fire marshal who reviewed the application that there are some sprinkler requirements that they will be coordinating with as part of separate permit processes. And then again, that the police department did communicate about admission criteria and operations, which is included in the background report. So the applicant has indicated that it would be 24-hour supervision and care, and the general admission for patients, they may be in from 1 to 5 days for their services, and that lower level currently is planned to accommodate between 14 and 20 patients. So they have indicated they do, from their licensing with the state of Minnesota, there are some minimum requirements for those rooms, and so they can't exceed a certain number based on the square footage that they have allotted in the building. So other considerations, so we did have the applicant hold a neighborhood meeting on August 8th. They met here at City Hall. There were 3 residents in attendance, 2 from the single family home neighborhood to the south, and then 1 representative from the multifamily complex to the west from I believe from the association or management of some sort. And the applicant was able to provide an overview of their services that they'd be providing and changes that they'd be making in operations. Generally, the neighbors in attendance at the meeting, they expressed interest that the site would be occupied full-time and that there would be more eyes on the site. With its vacancy, there have been some issues that the neighbors have noticed. And one of the things that they expressed an interest in very severely at the neighborhood meeting was the inclusion of a fence of separation. So with that request, we've included a condition that the applicant install a fence separating the adjoining residential land uses. But generally, staff is supportive of the application. We do recommend that the Planning Commission recommend to the City Council approval of the CUP, subject to 3 conditions. related to those exterior signage and lighting and the fencing requirement that came up at the neighborhood meeting. I can stand for questions this evening, and then we do have representatives from the applicant group in the audience as well.
Sounds good. Thanks, Ms. Madden. Commissioners, any questions, concerns? Commissioner Wallace?
Thank you, Ms. Madden. Nice presentation. Just one quick question, and you may have answered it by after the neighborhood that they proposed a fence. And this question may be for you or for the applicant themselves in regards to having a fenced-in area for like a smoking area or something of that nature on the exterior for potentially up to 20 residents or temporary residents, however we want to refer to them as well as staff outside with them as well, just to kind of buffer that from the backyard of the residents.
That's a great question. So at the neighborhood meeting, the applicant group did indicate that there would likely be a staffing area for similar use from the rear door. So there is some existing landscaping that they'll be kind of removing some underbrush and things like that to take care of. And this would be on the south side of the building. And they did indicate at the neighborhood meeting that they would be open to the fence, and I let them know that it may be a condition of approval as part of the application. If they do get a moment to speak, they may be able to speak in more detail of their plans there, but it isn't related to their conditional use permit, any like landscaping changes that they were to make in this particular case.
And is there any requirements for the fencing as part of the condition?
It would just be a fence that meets city code and the building code requirements.
So chain link could be allowed or whatnot?
We've said for privacy and screening, so it would need to be of a, I think it says 100% screened in the ordinance, would be the language.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions, commissioners? Commissioner Timmerman?
So I live right in that area and I frequent the Walgreens daily, almost. The parking lot between Walgreens and this particular property to get back onto Lac Lavon is in significant disrepair. It had been patched poorly about 2 years ago, and about a year ago they did a bit of overlay, I would call it, right in the main entry, but there's still pooling of water that occurs there. And that in the last year has already started to deteriorate, excuse me. So I'm less concerned about the fences for the 4 people or the 4 homes in the backyard that have had similar use of this property in their backyard for many, many years, and much more concerned about the, dozens, if not hundreds of vehicles that go through there on a daily basis that have gotten damage. I mean, the potholes that were in that area would swallow your car 2 years ago. So I would suggest that we think about looking at the parking lot too as a condition of this. And I'm just mentioning that because I've had damage to my own vehicle in that area, and I think this is a great opportunity to, further address the broken window theory of rehabilitating potholes and parking lots when we normally don't have an opportunity to have any influence in that area. So just a comment.
Can I speak to that?
Not at the moment.
In a moment.
Yep. So I just wanted to share that with the commission since I frequent the area and buy my kids toys there very regularly. I'm cheapo.
There's nothing wrong with that, as long as the kids like it.
Yeah.
Any other questions, commissioners? Admissions of being cheap, anything like that? Frugal, thank you. Thank you, that's a better way to put it. Okay, a couple questions I have is, what was the use of the building before? It was a same thing, wasn't it?
So it was, I guess, office use or a counseling use as well. So there was a drug and alcohol counseling center there for a number of years, but most recently it's been vacant. I'm not sure the exact time period on vacancy, though.
Was it a live-in facility as well?
It was not,
Oh,
no.
okay. And we haven't had something like this in the Burnsville before?
Not that I know of. Have we had this type of application in the last several years?
Okay. With that, I will ask the applicant to step up to the podium. If you just want to state your name and your address for the record.
Mohammed Farah, address is 9723 198th Street, Lakeville, Minnesota.
Thank you, sir.
And to address your comment, it's one of the main things in our construction project, so that is actually being one of the biggest things being addressed once we close on the purchase, and should be taken care of within the next couple months once we close on the purchase.
Love it.
Thank you, Mr. Farah. Any other questions for the applicant? Mr. Farah, do you have facilities like this in other places?
So we currently have the outpatient facility on Burnsville Parkway and County Road 5.
Okay.
And we kind of outgrew that facility, and it's one of the reasons why we're looking at purchasing the Lac Lovin Drive. And then also adding the detoxification and withdrawal management program. So we saw this facility as an ideal location to put two businesses in the same location.
So you don't have another business where it's an overnight or a resident stay kind of, okay.
No.
I know there's going to be some concerns from residents. What are your concerns? Can you address some of those?
Absolutely. So being a business owner and entrepreneurship isn't something that I'm new to. Mm-hmm. So over the past 6 years, I've owned various different businesses, and I'm overly familiar with securing a facility. So I was talking to Sarah about that. A lot of our facilities, we have bright lighting, security cameras that sense motion and actually make audible noise. So if you were to try to cause harm to the property, we would know about it, and then it's 24/7 centrally monitored. So fire and all of those other things would get addressed by that. And the other part being the facility would be in a hospital kind of setting, so secured and locked down. So once you get funneled into the lobby, you really don't have much of a choice but to go into the office suites, which is the upstairs level. But once you get down to the detox level, it's key card access, everything is locked. So there's nowhere for anyone to go. And all of the individuals will be contained within the facility by professional staff. There'll be a medical director for the detoxification program, many nurses on staff, personnel that do security matters and things of that nature.
Overnight, what type of personnel do you plan on having on site?
Many nurses and then several aides. They'll
Okay.
always be there 24/7.
So more than one is what you're saying?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yep.
Mr. Timmerman?
Yeah, I just wanted to follow up. Thank you for sharing that about the parking. I think that's fantastic. You guys want to address that issue. I'll just reiterate the water, the way that it settles is something I have whoever your engineer or your paving specialist to take a look at. I think this is a similar use to the property as there was in the past. I think it's great. I don't mean to minimize the neighbors. Obviously, it's great that you're paying close attention, having those neighborhood meetings, trying to be a good neighbor to those homes. So I think that's fantastic. I think this is something needed in Burnsville. When that facility shut down, I actually had a neighbor come to me and ask me if I knew why it did and if it would be reopening. And I told him just last week, I said, you know what, I'll have more information for you soon. So I think a treatment facility back in that place again would be great for the community. So thank
Absolutely.
you.
Thank you.
Any further questions for the applicant? Thank you, Mr. Farah.
I do have one thing that I was going to address that
Absolutely.
Robert Timmerman addressed earlier. The condition with the fencing, we had a little bit of concern about that. We were hoping we could put landscaping and other things in place instead of having to put fencing around 1.3 acres. So wanted to bring that up in this hearing to see if there were some sort of resolution or conversation we can have about that.
Okay. Well, that's something we could consider as a part of the planning commission here.
Okay.
Is one of the conditions listed, and what we recommend down to city council would reflect there.
Correct.
So it's a burden to have to put up the fence, is what you're saying, or it would be too expensive?
There's currently, one of the neighbors, being the apartment building, I believe, her main concern was privacy. So if you go over to the property, you'll see a lot of evergreen, super tall evergreen trees that are already in place, and accomplishes that goal. There's maybe 1 or 2 spots that are missing, and we're going to fill that right back in. And then the neighbor in the rear, hers was privacy. Well, the building is super tall. Either way, you're going to have individuals that can see from either level into your property. there's really not much from a business owner perspective that we can do besides put up landscaping, we feel. We think it's a burden to have to fence the whole property for privacy reasons.
Okay. All right. Any other, with that added knowledge, any other questions? Commissioner Anderson?
So it sounds more like the privacy is related to just visual privacy, not like putting up a specific border between your establishment and any neighbors to prevent people from, I guess, going between the two.
That was our main concern. There's already a fence that exists for separating the properties. So,
There's already a fence that does exist? Is it just for a portion of it then?
for separating the south section of the property from the single-family homes.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Mr. Farah.
Thank
I really
you.
appreciate it. And with that, this is a public hearing. It is 7 o'clock, and I'm going to open up the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak to this issue can step up to the lectern. Otherwise, if you're on Zoom, you can use the chat feature to tell the moderator you'd like to speak to this issue. Or if you're on calling by phone, just dial *6, and you should be able to speak to the moderator. And I am assuming nobody's on Zoom. Looks like it. I'm not seeing anyone stepping up. With that, at 7:01, I will close the public hearing, and I'll turn it back to our commissioners for discussion. Commissioner Timmerman.
So I'm looking at the satellite image from Google, and I think Mr. Farah brings up a really good point. If there's already a fence on the property here to separate people from walking from his future business to the backyards of the 4 neighboring homes, I think that provides the security, and I'm looking at like 3 rows of overstory trees between their property and the adjacent property. So I don't disagree with Mr. Farah and his assessment of that particular addition, or I guess subtraction of the condition. I guess the question for Ms. Madden is, the fence that got added, was that more for the apartment side where there's less tree coverage?
So the resident at the neighborhood meeting that was most interested in the fencing requirement was from the western lot line with the apartment complex. So there also was a discussion of landscaping as an alternative. That is an approved method of screening in the zoning ordinance. So we could add that as an or the commissioners could choose to add that as an or, if you so choose, fencing or landscaping screening, or you can modify it to your own will.
Chair, Mr. Farah, could I ask him a question?
Absolutely. Mr. Farah, if you don't mind.
Sure.
Would you be open to doing some landscaping on the western side rather than the privacy fencing? To
Absolutely.
provide some more natural screening like there is along the south side?
Absolutely. And there's a 5-foot natural perm right around that area as well. So we'd be happy to add to that. We've got a lot of work we need to do in the back area to beautify it from a landscaping perspective. So.
Yeah, it's
Yes.
amazing how quickly things can grow over with the property sitting vacant just for a little while.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Commissioner Wad, you had some?
Yeah, and by the way, thank you for providing a much-needed service to the community. That's pretty huge. So there's a fence on the south side now, and our condition, as it's stated, would require a fence around the entire property, or is it really just having a fence on the west side?
On the adjoining residential land uses, so south and west.
Oh.
I believe it's not a continuous fence.
Okay. So we're really just talking about, if we're gonna add a fence, we're really just talking about adding a fence on the west side because there's already one on the south, or landscaping on the west side.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you.
Commissioner Anderson?
Just out of curiosity, what would happen if that was a condition on there about having the landscaping or a fence, and landscaping was added, and the neighboring residents did not think it was enough? Is there like a limit that we would need to be setting on that, or like what happened if they were saying that's not good enough? Just thinking outside the box there.
That's good.
Thank you, that's a good question. So following let's say we review a building permit and a landscaping plan and it meets the satisfaction of city code. Following that, it does become a neighbor to neighbor discussion. It does become as part of that, once the building permit has been issued and it does meet those standards and is inspected, there would not be room for them to be part of the public process. This meeting and the neighborhood meeting were their opportunity to be part of the public process.
Okay, just checking.
Any other questions or concerns? I agree with Commissioner Timmerman and Commissioner Wad. This is a needed facility. There are people struggling with addictions. We had opioid addiction come through recently, and it really proves that this is something that is out in the public and something that we could use. So, Mr. Farah, thank you for bringing this to our city. I really appreciate that. With that, I'd be looking for a motion. Commissioner Timmerman.
I'll make a motion to recommend the city council approval of the conditional use permit that was presented to us tonight with the 3 conditions, with the amendment of condition 3 to read a fence or natural screening shall be installed on the property to provide privacy and screening for the adjoining residential land uses.
Commissioner Braddock.
I second the motion.
Okay, we have a motion by Commissioner Timmerman, seconded by Commissioner Braddock. With that, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed, nay? And the motion carries. It is unanimous. It will end up on the consent agenda on September 20th for City Council, Tuesday, September 20th, in these very chambers. And with that, we'll move on to the next item on our agenda, and that is updates.
All right, so your next planning commission meeting is September 26th. So currently, we have one discussion item on the agenda. It is possible that this meeting will be canceled, but we will notify you ahead of time by email if that is the case. Otherwise, this past last week on Tuesday, the application for outdoor storage for the commercial vehicle parking lot was approved by the city council with no issues on the consent agenda. And Kevin, do they have a event that they're invited to upcoming?
Yeah, I sent you guys an email about that CAV workshop that's coming up.
Mm-hmm. That
So
should be
that's coming up. Look for that if you're interested.
good deal.
Yeah, that's all the updates we have.
Good deal. Any other updates from the commissioners? All right, well, it takes us to number 6.
Come on, Mr. Anderson.
Well, I'm waiting to second it.
Yeah, okay, Commissioner Watt.
Are you looking for a motion to adjourn?
That's what I'm looking for.
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Wad. Oh, I have a second. Commissioner Anderson.
I'd like to second that, please.
Good deal. A motion's been made by Commissioner Wad that we adjourn, second by Commissioner Anderson. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? None. With that, concludes our meeting for tonight. Thank you for joining us. Have a great night.